All right, my friends, welcome back to another V-Rising video. Today, we're going to be going over the 6 new spells in the spell book. This is not including the Shard Ultimate for Megara. We're just going to be going over the 6 spells and showing a bit of how you can go about setting them up or using them. There's a lot more to it than just this. I'm going to show you the basics of how they function and how you can kind of think about ways to use them, starting with Carrion Swarm. Now, I spawned in a perfect jewel for this. I will say there's other things that you could build on this. Me personally, I like this setup with increased damage by each of the bats, putting it totally at 66% per bat. And then if you hit all 4, it stuns for 1 second. That's not incapacitate, it is a stun. And then you have Lesser Vampiric Curse dealing 60% damage and leeching 24% HP if you hit at least one of those bats. And then same thing, if you hit one of the bats, you do a Fading Snare for 1.6 seconds. The reason I like it this way with the Fading Snare, there's another thing you can put with like a Leech Explosion or whatever. The reason I like the Fading Snare is because spacing this thing is really difficult in general. Like obviously, I just missed completely, that's hilarious. Obviously, like there are ways to make it significantly easier, but spacing it is really hard. So a lot of times you may hit like 2 or 3 or none if you're me. You hit like just 2 of them like this. At least you still have that Fading Snare and the Vampiric Curse. So for me, that's kind of like how I like to do this. What I would consider doing with this, running with these specifically, is a whip. I think whip E specifically is like one of the strongest setups or one of the most helpful setups for Carrion Swarm, as well as you could also set up like freeze builds as well with like a Frost Bat or a Crystal Lance. But there's definitely combo potential in this situation here with Crystal Lance. And if you don't want to do that specifically, you could do something like Frost Barrier and whatnot. So this wasn't ideal, but for instance, you would put like, maybe you put like a chill coating on this, and maybe you do this, you block something, they have chill on it, then you veil attack, then they're frozen, and then that helps you space it for a perfect hit, right? So same thing goes with the E here. If you go like this, you can back up, makes it kind of easy to hit all of them, and you can see the damage that it's doing. So spell power builds, I'm just gonna show you what I have here. I am like, with my weapon on here, with my weapon, oh, I don't have this. There we go. So with everything here, we are completely maxed out. We're a little bit over cap here, only because I'm running enhanced conductivity for the static procs. I'm going to show you why in a second here. But overall, this spell works really well with other lockdown. So definitely with like a Veil of Frost. Frost Barrier is pretty good as a defensive, so you can do this from long range. And like I said, you know, you'll trigger some of this frost on them that way, and then you can kind of Veil attack to freeze. And you go for that perfect spacing to hit all 4 of them. Things to watch out for is if you're in open world here, it's easy to just hit a rock and then you don't get to hit all 4 of them. So definitely watch out there. But otherwise, this thing hits stupidly hard if you hit all 4 of them. You can honestly use it even without a spell build if you wanted to. And one of the ways you do that would be with like a whip, for instance. You can go like this. You can whip E somebody, back up, perfectly space this before the entangle goes off, and then you veil into them and spear Q. So it's obviously that's a lot of things. You actually may be able to walk up and spear Q. Let me just see if that works here. So let's go like this. There you go. So you don't have to veil, just as long as you start moving the second you cast it, and you can get all of that damage all together. So you can imagine even on a physical build, this thing still hits pretty hard, or like maybe a hybrid build if you're running like Rogue Draculan or Draculan Rogue or something along those lines. And you just go for the spacing or whatever for the whippy, right? And you go to the Carrion Swarm, walk up, spear Q, big damage. Okay, another thing you can do really quick before we'll move on here is if you're running like Crystal Lance or like Frost Bat, for instance, it's really easy to just like hit them with this. They have chill coating on them. Now they're frozen. And now you get the perfect spacing. So, okay, next thing we're gonna move on to here is Reign of Chaos. So Reign of Chaos, stupidly powerful thing here. Really strong combination. You'll notice this patch pretty much, this is like predominantly what I've seen most people running overall is Veil of Frost, because you can consume chill to freeze coating because you can apply freeze or chill so easily, and Frost Barrier with the recast to freeze ability. So you can do a lot of CC this way. So like I just poke like this, he has frost on him. Now he's frozen, right? And then I break him out of that. I Veil of Frost. He's frozen again. Okay, so there's a lot of lockdown, and he's frozen again here, and then he's frozen again. All right, so you get the idea. We're just freezing like absolute complete maniacs. These two together are really good. There's also, okay, another thing to note. Before, using offensive spells was kind of like rough on 1.0. It is absolutely viable even on like hybrid builds of like physical spell power or like heavy spellcaster builds. Do insane damage. I'm sure you saw that with Carrion Swarm. I mean, it was doing preposterous amounts of damage, 314, and then this thing crits 73. I mean, we're at 400 damage with one spell. Insane. And keep in mind, our base HP is pretty much the same as it was in 1.0. Obviously, we can increase it a little bit more. We have some damage reduction, that kind of thing. But honestly, it doesn't really matter if you're building glass cannon spell power. You can just do insane damage. So let's go ahead and go to the Reign of Chaos. The way this thing works, obviously, we're casting it like this. And it shoots out 8 different bolts there. The things I chose for this at the moment is just it adds an additional meteor strike at the center of the location, 80% damage. So another meteor strike is always nice. And then the first meteor engulfs the area. So it's like kind of like void, that little void jewel. 30% chance to spawn a greater meteor, which deals an additional 32% damage. And it's 30% bigger. You'll notice those here. You'll see like a bigger meteor right there. There you go. So really, really strong there to have those greater meteors. I like those. I like the RNG on that. And then obviously hitting a target infected by Ignite, engulfs, and inflicts agonizing flames is really strong. The way I would suggest using this is with a spear Q and other things that lock them down. Specifically, spear Q is probably the best way to do it. So the idea would be like you freeze them, cast this, right? So you hit them with all of that, and then it's kind of just pounding on top of them while you hit them with all of these things. Right, so just huge damage going off, and then you knock them away. Another really good thing about Reign of Chaos overall, it's obviously not just something you just like throw on them. I mean, you can, but it is really good as a zoning tool. People will not want to walk into this. It does insane damage. I mean, 380% magic damage, not including all these additional effects. You can imagine somebody's trying to get onto you, and if you do that combination right here, they're frozen, do this, right? You knock them away. They are not really going to want to re-engage because there's so much stuff going on that they're just like, oh, I guess I just get destroyed by chaos meteors. So really good zone denial tool, good in team fights overall because it's an AoE, especially if you're in a tight, compact space. Not too tight, but tight enough. If it's too tight, it actually has an issue where it'll actually randomly not cast spells, as you can see. So there's one there. And there's one there. So yeah, definitely don't make it a little, so it's not too tight of a space, but if it's a small, like maybe like a 2x2 or something, this thing is going to hit hard. Okay, next thing we have is Unholy Chains. Things I put on this is just so this thing, the thing about Unholy Chains that is really good is whenever you cast on somebody, it reduces their movement speed depending on how far away they are. But then for you, it doesn't, I don't believe it reduces your move speed. And here I have it inflicting a fading snare whenever it ends. And then it increases your movement speed and heals you with the damage done or whatever. And then also reduces movement speed of the affected target while channeling by 12%. But this is just a massive movement speed slow while giving you a movement speed buff. And then it pops for big damage. It can crit for a lot of damage, 336. And how I would suggest building this, it's a 1.7 second channel, which is really, really tight. So I would probably look at something like a slasher E and then backing off. And then popping like that, right? Or you can also do a whip E, I believe is a 2-second entangle on that. And also freezes is a really good way to do it. This thing hits really hard, but just keep in mind while you're channeling, you do nothing. There's some jewel effects that make you do damage while you're channeling, but in my opinion, I kind of don't really like them because they break CC. And I think the goal of this is to get that big pop at the end. You can also use it to chase targets down when they're running away. You just cast like this, you speed up and run after them, and then it detonates for big damage on top of them. It slows them. And then if they break it, obviously, they also get another a fading snare. If they break it, the distance by exceeding 14 meters, they'll still get a fading snare. Help you catch up with them. Overall, I see this kind of like a combo thing here. So like it would be something like, you hit them with a bunch of stuff, and then you end with a freeze or whatever. And then you hit them with this. You back off. So it detonates here, and then whenever it detonates, you're this far away. They don't really have an easy way to retaliate against you. Okay, Curse, one of my favorite spells here. I picked damage modifier increased by 10%, reapplies weaken whenever the curse ends, inflicts a fading snare, and spawns a wisp to heal you after the curse ends. The way this spell works, you cast it on them, they're marked for 3.5 seconds. 40% of the damage they take will be dealt again as additional damage whenever the effect ends, whenever it pops, up to 500% of your spell power. Now, either the damage modifier amplified is 50% damage instead of 40%, which makes it so you can get to that 500% a lot easier. And overall, this thing can do insane damage. I would say it also, you get Phantasm for everyone you hit. That's a nice little plus. There's some other things you can do. There's a knockback jewel that's kind of nice as a get off me tool. There's a jewel that increases the duration to 4.5 seconds. My problem with those are knockback is good. It's a personal preference, especially if you're a spellcaster. Like, you probably want to get them away from you. The problem is if you're trying to do weapon combos and you knock them away, a lot of times you don't get to do those weapon combos because you like push them away from you, right? And the other thing, the damage on hit has another jewel that does damage whenever you hit them. I think that one's actually kind of bad-ish because these things proc counters regardless. So to me, I kind of look at it like something where I would hit them with something like a slasher E, mark them, and then spear Q them, right? That's some way you can look at it. It pops for 86, does a little bit extra damage. That's not a ton, but if you're building a more physical build, that's one way that I would kind of think about that. And then in terms of spell power, I'll show you how much damage this thing can actually do. If we do like, let's do this. We're gonna go like this. We're gonna go like this. 192. Okay, so we just did huge damage with everything. Even just doing this. Look at that damage. Okay, so big damage from this thing. And I would say this thing also is pretty interesting in team fights. The problem is it procs defensive, so you have to be really careful when you use it. However, if there's a team fight where you're kind of like getting ready to engage and somebody just throws this thing out, if somebody gets marked by this and then everyone engages on them or whatever, it's going to just amplify the damage there. But again, you're giving them defensive abilities, so be very, very, very careful about that. Overall, hard to use, but one of my favorite spells to figure out. It's actually really fun. I also like using it with freeze spells because obviously this makes it a lot easier. Boom, there you go. So you get the idea. You freeze them, right? Apply it, and then just go crazy on damage. And just have a big bonus damage at the end of it. Okay, and last but not least, one of the craziest spells. Also, I think this one's my favorite overall. Actually, sorry, we skipped Arctic Storm. We'll come back to that in a second. Lightning Tendrils, we're going to go to that one now. The reason why is because I was just using it. Lightning Tendrils is awesome. Does insane damage. It is easy to deal with, and obviously if somebody hits you with a frost barrier when you're casting it, you kind of just kill yourself. But whenever you use this thing, it is very strong. Oh, sorry, that kind of just reminded me. Let's go back to Curse real quick. One important thing on Curse. You can use it whenever whenever your ally is going to combo them. So like if you're in a duo and use somebody E's like this, then you can apply Curse. He spear Qs, right? And then you can use something like Lightning Tendrils while he's spear Qing to kind of guarantee that you'll hit the top there. So Curse is a pretty cool combo with that, but even if you don't run Curse, you can still do it with a spear Q. It's a really good way to combo with spear Qs now that we can't do a bunch of spear Q combos. If you somebody's spear Qing while your ally is spear Qing, you just go ahead and hit them with this and do hilarious amounts of damage in combination. Jewel effect I picked. Lightning bolts deal 12% increased damage. 36% chance to trigger chain lightning, 1 additional projectile, and if you hit 6 in a row, you stun for 1.6 seconds. There's some other really good ones with like cast rate and movement speed while you're casting that I actually prefer. This is kind of like maxed for damage because I really just want to show you how much damage this can do. I mean, just look at this. I mean, that's over 300 damage just from that. There you go. Almost 400 damage on that one. Okay. So this thing does ludicrous amounts of damage, and you can imagine if somebody's spear queuing while you're doing this, and you hit them with this. I mean, you do 400 on top of their spear queue, and they come out stunned, so then you both just get to like throw axes on top of them or something. Just absolutely absurd amounts of damage coming out of Lightning Tendrils. Okay, last but not least, we'll go back to Arctic Storm. Keep in mind, this one cannot crit, neither can Curse. And I believe that's it. The other ones can still crit, yes. So other than Arctic Storm and Curse can't crit. Arctic Storm, this one is very strong. I will say the distance is not super big on it. The range isn't all that far. However, regardless, it's very strong in a close range build. Even if you're running on like a physical build, 180% magic damage is a lot of magic damage. Like, it's just so much. Even if you can't crit, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm doing 150 damage there. It ends with a freeze. The final hit can be countered. So you see this going like this. That final little burst can be countered or used a defense ability on, which is important to know. However, the initial hits hit through counters. And what's crazy about that is you start casting on somebody and you see that they're going to try to counter that last hit to avoid the freeze. You cancel it and then freeze them with your frost barrier anyway. So now they wasted their counter and they're frozen anyway for you to do your combos too. Extremely powerful in that regard. Also, I have a jewel on here. Increase the damage total to it's a total of 204% magic damage. Increase the freeze duration by 0.8 whenever you hit a chilled target. Okay, insane. And then healing self. You heal self for 16% of the damage done. Always nice to get a little bit of heals. 50% shield whenever shield self for 50% of your shield power when you activate it. So you can see the little shield pop up here. 40 HP or so. It's just nice to have a little bit more shield, a little more HP heal if you want to. But there's some other things you can put on it, like knockback and movement speed while you're channeling it, that kind of thing. But overall, this spell is really, really, really strong. Again, it has a shorter range. That's for good reason. If it was a further range, it would just be busted beyond belief. It still is very strong, especially for baits, where you kind of use it and you force the enemy to burn a cooldown. And then when they burn the cooldown, you can still do things like Veil of Frost, right? To freeze them anyway, right? So they're like, oh man, I'm getting hit. I don't want to get frozen, right? So they counter, and you're like, oh, you counter, so you just cancel the channel and then freeze this way while they're countering. And then you get to do your spear Q, or you're channeling and they dash away. You dash to chase them, and then you freeze them, right? And keep in mind, if you dash after them and then they counter because they're like, oh, he's gonna veil attack me, you could still do that to freeze them to like guarantee a freeze. So this thing just gives you a lot of ways to like almost guarantee lockdown on the enemy, as well as get them to burn cooldowns. It is brutal. Again, it does have a pretty short range. This thing is just overall insanely powerful, especially whenever you time it with like your ally's spear queuing. And right when it's about to end, you have this going. So if this thing ends, it freezes. Again, then you get another axe on them, whatever it may be. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed that. How I would set this up, I mean, really, it's kind of like this is kind of how it's set up here. Let's go back over to Lightning Tendrils real quick before we leave. How you set this up, I kind of combo with other people. You can cast it, and one really important thing, too, is to cancel the channel right here. Totally forgot to mention that. So you can kind of like bait people out with it. It's also a very good bait tool for just cancel action in general, because it's so scary that a lot of times you can do that and get them to pop their counters. And then, yep, overall, that's how I would set all of these up. A lot of CC, and this one specifically, really good as a combo tool. And as long as they have their defensive ability down is whenever you would want to use this for huge damage. Anyway, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave them down in the description below, and we'll catch you in the next one.